Alrighty, so definitely we can add some pinks and yellows and purples and little bits of different colors to add for our little elements. Change it up a little bit. Don't need too much red. And a tiny bit of daffodil yellow. Got my old yellow. And some violet pansy or perfect purple, whatever you want to use. Just little peas, guys. You don't need much. Okay. And then we're going to start also putting in some of our greenery in our other pots to get them filled up. Okay. So we'll start off with our easiest ones that we can do is with our little flicks of our grasses. Get that filled in. Okay. So we're just going to multi-load a little bit of that sap green. And you can use a little bit of yellow, a little bit of citrus green in there, just to kind of change it up from plant to plant. So some plants you're going to use a little bit more yellow, some you might use a little bit more white, some you might use a little bit more of the green, just to kind of change up each one. Okay, so this one I want it to be a little bit more brighter yellow kind of green. Okay, so we can always add a little bit of both to brighten things up a bit. Okay. And then we're going to start by just flicking up a bunch of little grassies. Okay, so you have a couple little areas. All right, so we have a couple different flowers there. All right, so the back ones are the tall ones. Right, add more paint, add a little bit of floating medium in there. Just a very tiny bit when you got the little tiny brushes, doesn't take much. Okay, and then what I do is I'll do in one direction first, grabbing the dark and flicking up, and then I'll flip around my brush and then add some light in there. And change it up a little bit, and then just add just a little bit of white now, and flick a little bit, a few lighter ones in there. Okay. Then I want to add some good sap to my edge again. Make sure that I've got a little bit of floating medium in there, some good movement in there. This is where we want to start putting our stems in. So we're going to start at the top and then come down. Okay, so depending on how many flowers you want to put in there. Okay, so little tiny chisels, guys. Straight down. And some of the little flower buds, I just put the smallest little stroke on there just to see it was like maybe just a little bud. Right? So you want to have some with a little bit of an angle to them. Okay, give it some interest. Okay. And then we're going to come over and add more white to our brush now. So we're going to lighten this green right up now. Okay, so it could be a little bit of dirty white. But I definitely want it to be a lot brighter. Okay, so we're going to move over to our smaller one here. Okay, so it's a little bit more chisel areas. Oops. Okay, so a little bit thicker areas, and then we did some chisels in there as well. Okay, so we'll put in our leaves in there first. Okay, so we want them to be a little bit greener than those little sprigs up there. So add just a little bit more green back in there for now. Okay, but a nice bright white light green. And so what I did there was get a little bit of pressure and then stand up on your chisel very, very short, slowly to get that fat little leaf in there. Okay, like a fatter grass. And put one in this direction, one in that direction. And we put one spilling over. Okay, so really fat at the top of the brim, and then slowly twist your brush along to get that little bit of a thin line. Okay. And I did a tiny little one on the side here. Okay, over to the side a little bit more, and spilling over. Maybe it is a little bit better. Okay. I always put a nice tall skinny one up here too in the middle. Okay. And then if you're getting too gloopy with your little brushes, just wipe them out on your towel. Okay, get rid of the gloopiness. Reload. Okay, so now I definitely want to have a lot more whiter on my edges. Okay, and we're going to do tiny little chisel strokes. And so just touch, 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 touch. Work your way down. Keep picking up fresh white. As soon as you notice it's starting to disappear, start picking up fresh white. Okay, just in that little brick layer. And one over here. Work your way down, then a little bit wide, and then slowly coming a little bit more narrow as you come down to the bottom. Okay, a little bit over to the side. White on white, so you can make these a little bit darker. And then more brighter as you come. And just little tiny ones that are going to spill over the side. And you can flip over your canvas, so then that way you can kind of layer a few chisels over this leaf. Okay, and just kind of work your way in until there's hardly touching your little center area. Okay. See how you feel. Put a couple more over on this side to give it some green. Okay. And now we will definitely want to have a little bit more yellowy leaf. Excuse me, so I can pick up just yellow and sap green and come right in here in this same mixture, guys. So then that way you're still picking up some of that dirty white and colors that are coming through, but it's going to definitely be a lot brighter. Okay. Add a little bit more yellow, and then make sure that you have your gradient is up there so that you have just a little bit of dark and mostly light. Okay. Keep adding more yellow, brighten things up. If you feel like you can't get that brightness, it's too wet, got too much paint in there, then start a new gradient pile. Okay. Now you want to make sure that you have nice dark at the tip so that we can do these tiny little leaves here in this one. Right. You start up at the back and put one up there. And then if you feel like you're not getting good coverage, guys, a lot of times I'll just come and put all my placement where I want them. And then as you're working your way around, they're starting to dry a little bit. And if you feel like you need to go over them again to get better coverage, then you can always go over them the second time. Picking up fresh green every time, dark sap green. Just that little tiny pea. Okay. Work one right over the edge, coming down. If it starts getting too hard on, you gotta get yourself twisted around. You gotta move a little tiny bit to the side, and then usually that'll help. Okay. Over to the edge, all the way around in a circle, leaving space. A little bit of white in that yellow to make it stand out a little bit more. And more off to the side there. And so you got your nice little circle going on. Excuse me. And I'm just going to quickly go over all of them so that you don't see any Pablo coming through. That one's not too bad. That one's okay. Okay, just leave them out if you feel like you want to catch up later, okay? Because you can always start working on other areas and then come back and fill these up a little bit more too. Okay. So now we want to start adding a little bit. We put these tiny little flowers in the front here. I added them after. Okay, so that was just like, what else could I put in there? So I thought I would add just some tiny, tiny little white flip-flop kind of looks, scruffy flowers in the very, very front. Okay, so we should put some greenery in for that. Okay, so we can go back to our different ranges, right? Make them look a little bit different. Okay, a little smaller plant. And you can always go a little bit stronger strokes. It looks like it's a little different plant. Because, you know, a lot of times they make those boxes with a lot of different plants in them, you know, a variety box. But we can always change it up a little bit. Okay, and then just a little bit of floating medium if it's getting sticky and dry. Okay, so we want to put in a couple stems, little short ones in there. Okay, you can clean your brush, get all that green out of there. Okay, so you can always just pick up just a tiny bit of white by itself on the corner of your brush. Just work that in just a little tiny bit. And then just to do a little bit of kind of little floppy, loose penalties with the corner of your brush, just here and there. Some smaller ones, some bigger ones. Little spots there. Okay, so now that we have the white on our brush in that one corner, we can come over and pick up just a little bit of that purple. Or you can use the number 2 liner brush if you want. Okay, so you want to make them a little bit different. You can always do some a little bit bigger, a little bit smaller. Okay, so I'm going to do these purple ones with a flat brush. The worst that can happen is if I don't like it, I'll rinse them off. Okay, so as long as your green is all dry, you're good to go, right? So where we want to put just the little punches of straight at the top of our stems. Okay, so we want that dark purple at the top. My purple is a little bit thick. Okay, then we're going to do a little bit of a pressure, flip it over into a C curve. Okay, a little bit over to this side. Make my back one just a little bit bigger. Okay, push yourself to try different ways. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is pick up fresh white. And the underneath ones, I want to have the light following, so it's a little bit lighter underneath. Give it a little bit of contrast. Okay, make it look a little different. Make them look like all little daisies if you wanted to, change them up. Okay, so again, the dark at the top. Just little touches, guys. Okay, and then we can always just add a couple little buds here, just so you're just touching them. Squish down. Squish down on your angle when you're touching, so that it kind of makes them a little bit small. Okay, maybe one up there. Nice, and then we can clean our brush and move to the number 2 or number 1 little script liner for the other ones, just so they almost look a little bit different. Okay, maybe you can get them a little bit smaller. Okay, and then we're going to flip-flop through our red and our yellow, so we've got to make sure that it's going to be a little bit more runny when we're doing this technique. Not too runny, but just enough there that you've got. I might have put too much. Wipe that out. And then I'm going to just fix my yellow here a little bit. That needs just a little bit of water. Okay, that way it's a little bit runny, and then sometimes I'll push it all together in a nice little pile. A little bit orangey, that's okay. Alright, wipe out your brush, get off rid of the excess. Come through with one side, come through with the other side. Right, and if you're not sure how it's going to look, just test on your plate a little bit. Oh, that's really runny, so it's going to spread your brush out a lot further. Okay. So try not to put too much water, guys. Empty this bottle here. I have to go fishing for another fresh bottle for red. Okay, so I'm just going to make a little bit of a thicker version over here. Okay, so the more water you got in there, the bigger these strokes are going to be. Okay, so my yellow is good, but my red was definitely a little bit too runny. Okay, and I grabbed one of my older brushes. You see it keeps separating on me? I gotta grab a different brush. There we go. Like I said, I have to go through these brushes. I really do. Get rid of them. Okay, let's try that again. Alright, let's see if I grab the good one. Okay, so when you wet it and twirl it around on a towel, it should all stay nice and together for you. I have all my good brushes on the other side, I think. I only have like 10 of them here. Okay, there we go. We found one. Alright, so you see how I really want to make sure that my brush is behaving. Okay, because if it's not behaving just with water staying together and a nice point for you, then it's not going to stay together for you on your painting. Okay, so we're a little happier there. Okay, so just little touches. You'll be happy with the amount of paint that you have. And we'll try it on here. Want just a little bit more yellow. Okay, lay the yellow on the top. It'll fall. Okay. Little press. Still have so much moisture in my red. Okay, so just erase them if you're making them too big. I just come right up underneath it and help it along a little bit. Okay, you see how I cheated? Push down, pop up. Push down, pop up. We'll put one over here. My fingers don't want to work today. Push and push. Okay, so it's like a little star. And then we just add a bunch of little pops here and there for your little buds. Okay, so then while we have our little brush, we can always go in and pick up a little bit of magenta. Okay, and again, the same thing. You can flip-flop through your white and your pink to get a couple different tones on there. Okay, and then we can always play around and with that little daisy stroke, again with some pink. Okay, not too much white. Just a little bit of variety in there. And just like those little daisy strokes. Just little pops. Getting too pink, too dark. Add a couple light ones. Okay, just here and there, random. And then a couple trickling down. And then we're going to make a few over here. Just 2 or 3 little touches beside each other, 4 or 5, make them random. Maybe 1 or 2, you know, here and there. Little buds. A little bit of pink here and there. And especially over some darker areas here. That way they pop out like they're looking. Too dark, just pop a little bit more white on top of them. Okay, and then we want to use some red over on this one. Okay, so they look like they're a little bit different. Okay, just little touches. Maybe they could be tiny little bows on here because they're so tiny you don't know what they are really. Special Mother's Day little one. Don't feel like you have enough light, then this is where you can play around a little bit more and just add a few more sprigs of white in there. Okay, and then we need to make a little bit of an inky sap green so we can put some curlicues in there. Okay, test it out. Take some of the paint out if you feel you got too much paint in there after diluting it a little bit. Okay, make sure that you've got a nice little chisel, nice little point. Okay, play around with them. Okay, so this is where we added them. Just here and there, hanging from more of the outsides of them. Okay. Very, very fine. Random. You can do a couple little sprigs coming out top if you want, just very short ones. But definitely the little bit of longer ones, cross over a couple. Okay, just very light, little airy. Okay. These little random ones. And where it's dark, you're not going to see them too much. If you have too much water and they're too translucent, then maybe you need to thicken up that paint a little tiny bit more. Okay. So they stand out a bit more. Okay. And then this is where I started doing some branches, guys, too. We have to fill up our little basket here. So whatever green you have on your brush, just go over into your burnt umber and pick up some of that burnt umber, a little bit of floating medium in there, so you have like a greeny brown kind of color. Okay. And then we can just start adding a bunch of little twigs. Okay. Wherever you have a main stem, okay, add a little tiny bit of floating medium in there so you can get those little fine edges at the top. Okay, you're gonna add little wise branches. You always have make a main branch and then more branches off of it. Okay, and a lot of these branches aren't going to be actually seen. So it's just to guide you to where you kind of want placement. Right, so just make it about 2-3 fingers here and there. And a couple little thin ones. A little bit more floating medium, too fat. Okay, so just some thin ones that are coming from the bottom. Some a little bit closer to the rim. Okay. Different layers of them. And just a really loose little bush there. Okay, and then I went back with my pouncer, my scruffy brush. Okay, so if you already used it, make sure you dry it really well on your towel. Okay, and again, you can try and change it up a little bit, guys. Maybe a little bit more yellow in it this time. Okay, a little bit of sap, a little bit of thicket if you want to make it a little bit lighter. Okay, just add more lighter color in there a little bit. A little bit of white, change it up a little bit. And again, you're just going to start adding those little branches, right? Wherever you see the edges there. You can even just leave this tree just like this too if you want. If you want to just have a little scruffy tree, you have lots of spaces in between it. I actually look kind of like that. I was just trying to fill it up and make it look a little different. Then I got a little excited with all my one-stroke leaves. Okay, so a little bit of a ball. Went over the edge a little bit. And so not too light, not too much white. And then you can come in with your little 6, or even if you want to be brave and use your number little 2. Or like I said, if you like your little tree like this, just leave it like that. Okay, so that way it looks a little bit different than your other little bushes. That's my mission tomorrow. I'm going through brushes. Now that I have my nice set, but there's no number 2 in that special set with the purple handles. Okay, so just squish out that little 2, so make it as fat as you can, so that we can pick up that sap and a little bit of green. Okay, and I'm going to brighten it up with some white. Okay, a little bit thick. Too much paint. Work it in good, spread it out a little bit. And so sometimes you just have to do like little touches, guys. Just touch and pull out. Touch and pull out to a point. Okay, try not to make them all in the same direction. Okay, so you can, some of them are going to be out, some of them are going to be a little bit down. Keep picking up just that tiny little bit of white. Make them a little bit brighter. Okay, and just keep flipping, flopping all the way through your little bush here. In random little areas. Sometimes I'll go and pick up just that tiny little bit of fresh white and just barely blend it in, guys, just so that you get that little bit more of a white edge. Okay, especially around the front. So it looks like these ones are further away in the back. And then you're grabbing a little brighter color around the fronts. They look a little bit closer to you. With my plate, smooth out my brush, pick up just that little bit of white, and then just enough to say that you're touching your plate to blend it in. I don't really spend a lot of time on the white areas, right? So once you've got it all smoothed out, come over, make sure your brush is smooth, right consistency, pick up your white, just a little touch sometimes. All you need to do is just to start blending that white in, and then it'll stay at the top for you. Like I said, I've got lots of nail experience with these tiny little brushes, so take your time, okay? If you don't get these all done, you can always add them in later. Okay? Just do a few to get comfortable and come back to it if you feel like you're rushing just to keep up to me. Okay, so I definitely want to have a couple little random leaves, you know, that maybe fell on the corner of the bucket, maybe. What, their basket? Maybe they're fell. Okay. I wouldn't put any leaves down here if you really want to make them fall on the ground until after we finish putting all of our stonework in there. Then you can always lay a few more leaves on the ground if you really wanted to. But we got to get all the shading done first. Okay, so now we can come into a little bigger brush again, maybe your 8. And I want to add a little bit more shading in the back area of, once this is all nice and dry, we can go in and grab a little bit of gray and just do a little bit of a gradient with some floating medium. Okay, and then we're going to flip our canvas upside down. And I want to add just that little bit of shading, reverse shading. You won't see too much over here in the dark, but you're going to see it right here in the white area, and you're going to see it right over your little buckets here. And this just helps to make them look like they're in the ground or in the box more. Okay, so I'm just going to add some shading all around the reversed area. Just subtle. And on the outs inside of your box. And since we have just the gray there, if you notice anything that's not neat, always go over it just around the edges just to intensify those little areas there a little bit more. A little bit of shading on here. Okay, so that kind of pops them in a little bit deeper in there. Okay, and then we also want to take some of this gray that we're going to eventually have to start mixing some black in here as well. But just for now, you can just put in a little bit more shading just in front of our pots, all around the edges here. Okay, and definitely on the outside of our basket here a bit more. But we won't spend too much time with this because we are going to come back to this with the... And you have two wheels here, so make sure you have two little skid mark lines here, one a little bit further back. Okay, so one's going to be back here, and one's going to be more in the front. And I still have this dirty area here that it's not covering. And you don't add any white, guys, if you don't have to. I'm just doing this to get better coverage right here. Those little skid mark areas. Okay, and then we did have to add those little, again, they were just more like little bigger daisy areas. Okay. I just used my little 6. We didn't put those in there yet either. Okay, so you can always just load up a number 6 with just white. And then you're just going to pounce a couple little random areas. This is like your pastas. I couldn't remember the name of it last time. Okay, so you can just add a few there. Add a little bit more green to your brush if you want to make them stand out a little bit more on your white area. Just little touches, guys. Okay. And then we also need to start putting in our door sign. Okay, so if you're not feeling comfortable with just freehanding it, grab a piece of chalk or a pencil. Okay, now remember this angle right here? This is the angle that you have to kind of stay with your sign as well. Okay, so a little bit of an angle on this. Okay, it's always easier to pencil it out and step back and look at it to see if it looks legit. Okay, so I need to erase a little bit more. Trying to get it look like it's straight on your door, even though your door is on an angle. Okay, so we definitely need to put in that white. Start base coating that. If it's not giving you a good coverage, just let it dry and we'll go over it again. And I just used one of those markers, really fine tip markers, to write in the words. Okay, so we can just let that dry. And then now I want to actually add this little glazing to our basket here too. Okay, so here we want to pick up our 6 or sorry, our 8 or our 10. Okay, something not too big. Okay, and then I want to pick up just that little bit of brown and floating medium. Okay, and make sure you have some floating medium in your brown too. I especially need it. My brown seems to be very thick here, old paint out of the bottom of the bottle. Okay, I'm going to make a good wash and shadow at the same time. So we want to add just a little bit more depth and things. We can add just that little bit of shadow around the edges. Okay, you can always pop in a little bit more. And it's very watery, right? It's a little bit washy brown. Just to add. So sorry, my voice today is done. Okay, and you're just putting a little bit of a wash. I hope that you guys can see that it's just that little bit of a dirtiness that I'm adding. Okay, so just that little bit of shadowing. Okay, and it's not covering your strokes underneath. Okay, I'm going to go all the way around the edge. I'll find a good spot for you guys to see. Okay, go all the way around the edge just to deepen, so then they look like those little basket weaves are actually looking dirtier white than they were. Right? This is how I did the little extra wash on it. Okay, and then you're just going to flip-flop that really washy brown just softly over it, just to soften things a bit more, just like a glazing effect. Just a little bit more darker around the outside and bring it in slowly. So go around your edge first and then slowly work your way in. Okay? That way you're slowly adding that depth and darkness in there. And especially around the bottom and underneath the rib. Okay, and then just very lightly translucent all along the bottom here. And just because it was looking too orangey for me, so I just felt it needed a little bit more. So I just made like a wash, so you can still see the strokes underneath. Soften things a little bit. And you see how that toned that down? Little dirty marks in there. You can always add just a little bit of shadowing now at the bottom of the base here too, and just underneath the lip, and make that stand out a little bit more further away. Same thing as underneath all these little guys. Okay, just all these little extra touches really helps to clean things up and make them look a little bit more intense. Right, see a little shadow under the rim. Around the outside. And I actually used a little bit of this brown in a wash in some of my shading here too. Okay, so you can go over some of your bricks a little bit here and there. Oops. And we're going to do a little bit of shadowing behind here. And having that little bits of brown in there just makes it stand out a little tiny bit more. Right, just like a dirty area here that's been walked on the path. Adding that little brown into the gray. Okay, especially over here, we want that little path to be a little bit dirty looking. Not so much gray, but dirty looking, right? It's been used, wear and tear, maybe some soil spilt over from one of the plants. So you're just adding a little bit of warmth in there in spots You know, it really helps to break things up a little bit. It's very, very subtle, guys. And then I also want to pick up more brown and floating medium to define my door. Okay, so right here where we're going to put the handle here, we definitely don't want that too dark. But I definitely want to come up around my door here a little bit more and add some depth, okay, in spots. And then you're also going to add the shading underneath your sign. Okay, so a little bit of brown under here, and that'll help fix your square a little bit if you made a mess. Okay, so just going just lightly around all the outside. Oops. Okay, take that out. Just intensifies that a little bit more. And down here at the bottom. Just kind of random little streaky areas. Clean my brush really good and dry it really good. Pick up some clean white. Fix my little sign. Let that dry. And this is where you're going to test yourself, guys, and see how tiny you can make those little tiny flowers that I put in the sign. Okay, so it looks a little bit brighter now. Okay, so while that dries, I think that's all we really need here is put our stones in. And if you see in this other little plant here, I did pop a couple more little leaves in after. Okay, so you see those little bare spots we have in the very middle of our plant over here? Okay, after you put your flowers in there, you're going to come in with your number little 6 and just try to add in just a tiny more little leaves to fill in that area. Okay, so that way they're a little bit layering on top of each other. I'm just trying to make them really tiny. Okay, here's little ones. And that fills that up a little bit more, and you can always just, you know, keep layering and playing with your little flowers on top. Okay, if they're not standing out enough, just add a couple more little white ticks here and there just to soften out on top of those little leaves, and then it gives it extra layers on there. Okay. And then our black for our wheels, and we'll do everything that we need to do with black all at the same time. Okay.